I'd like to call to order the Rutland City Board of School Commissioners regular meeting. I have 6:31 here, and I first wanted to start by acknowledging that at the end of last week, our school community endured a tragic loss of one of our students. Our thoughts and sympathy go out to the family, friends, and our entire community. As a board and as a district, we respect the wishes of this family for privacy during this difficult time. Our students in the schools with connections to the student or family have been supported individually and in groups by counselors and other staff in the district over the last several days. And to any of the parents out there, if your child needs support through this difficult time, school counselors are available. Any information regarding arrangements for remembrances, services, or how to support the family will be made available to our community as soon as we have that information and permission to distribute it. Again, the board extends our most sincere sympathy to the family. So I would now invite all that wish to join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I'd like to note that all commissioners are in attendance with the exception of Commissioner Kavakis and our student rep, LaFemina. And then next up would be the approval of the agenda, and we have an addendum on your desks for the personnel. Aaron?
I have two requests regarding the agenda. The first would be that under new business, the mascot issue be tabled until at least the end of the school year, based on two different reasons. One would be the tragedy that everyone has suffered this past week. I don't feel that this is an appropriate time to take up that issue and have the kids involved in more change and transition. Also, this bill has not been signed by the governor, so it is not law at this time, nor have I, and I don't believe any of the other board members, have actually seen a copy of what was passed and sent to the governor. So I feel it appropriate to wait until at least the governor has signed it and the end of the school year.
So do you have a motion?
That's a motion, yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
And any discussion? Mary Beth?
Regarding the mascot imagery and school branding agenda item, while I do find this topic to be extremely important, and an extremely important one, and an excellent first step in addressing school culture, safety, and mental health, I know myself and other commissioners would like to allow more time to collaborate on the most effective way to create real change. I did also have a motion drafted. I don't know how we, I think we're...
So it depends on if you are proposing an amendment to her motion or you're in agreement with her motion.
I have a different amendment, so I would like to word it differently. I don't know what I do about that.
Is there a different substance to the motion?
I'm looking to just officially postpone it to June while we just have a little more time to collaborate.
I think it's the same idea.
So until the June meeting, you are...
Well, I'm saying until the end of the school year, so I would say in the July meeting, people would have had time to understand what the law says and what actions, if any, we have to take immediately. But again, we've not seen the copy and it has not been signed into law. So until that happens and we actually get a copy of it, I mean, I would like to know what the rights and responsibilities are, and that, you know, this has all been smoothed out within Montpelier so that it is one issue, not multiple changes.
So would you like to make a motion for an amendment? or we can take this motion up and then a different motion could be made.
I would like to amend the motion.
Okay?
I move to amend the current motion to approve the current agenda, but with the mascot imagery and school branding item removed and officially postponed to the June meeting of the Rutland City Board of School Commissioners.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a question.
My motion hasn't been seconded.
Yeah, I'm just.
Your motion was seconded.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That's why discussion started.
How does that work? I'm just curious. We have, I'm just asking if there's a motion on the table that's been firsted and seconded, whatever. Do we have to decide on that before we do something?
No, the
Else?
amendment takes precedence, and then the amendment has to be disposed of, and then it goes back to the original motion.
Okay, gotcha.
So isn't there something about where Karen gets to consider?
Friendly amendment is
Friendly
not
amendment?
an appropriate amendment, and the
Okay.
board has misused it in the past.
Okay,
It is not technically in line with Robert's rules.
okay.
So we shouldn't be using that in the future? We've used it in the past before, but we shouldn't be
Correct.
doing it in the future?
Correct.
Right? Okay, so what she's doing is, we need to vote on this.
Correct. We have an amendment on the floor to postpone it till June, and we have a second on that. So now we are discussing the amendment. Stephanie?
I disagree. I know you and I have had some conversation, but we, as a district, if this goes through, we need to let the students heal a little bit from this, and a month out is not it. We also need to let Montpelier finalize it, so we're not going back and forth the way we have for the last 2 years. I think it's going to show that if we don't put this off to more of an extended period of time until Montpelier, then it shows that this board really doesn't care the way they say they do. This tragedy is something that has affected, I don't know if it's affected any of you else sitting here, but I know it has affected my family. And the fact that we are even having this debate, I understand the agenda went out before this tragedy happened, but this should not be something that we are sitting here having a conversation about. This board is, part of what I've had conversations with members is about healing. This isn't going to heal. We need to, at this point, do it properly. From what Montpelier is saying, have conversations within ourselves. I know it was another board member had maybe mentioned doing like an ad hoc committee. Let's have a conversation, not necessarily arguing, but have the conversation and have it all in place, the education piece, all of stuff that has been talked about in the last 2 years at this point. I mean, at a certain point, we have to stop, we have to move on. We are adults. This is not the time for this conversation to be had.
Kevin?
I understand that people are hurting right now, but we also need to remember that there are students in our community who have been hurting for a long, long time under this mascot. And
They start.
If we put this off again, we give the message to them that their feelings and their rights are insignificant and are easily put aside. And that's not respectful. And that's not what we're supposed to be about as a community. I understand your point of view, but I disagree. And I think we need to correct this thing once and for all, and putting it off.
With the final guidance of.
Stephanie, you don't have the floor.
Putting it off is not putting it off by itself does not fix the problem. We need to address the problem. So I'm opposed to both of these motions, but I understand your point of view.
Kathy?
I understand that it's a really difficult time, but I agree with Kevin. I also want to say that the bill is available online. I have seen it. I've read through it a couple of times. And it has been passed by the House and the Senate. And so the governor does not need to sign it for it to become law. He would have to veto it. And even if he vetoes it, it's not the end of the story. And given his voting record in this subject matter, he's likely not to veto it. So it is going to become effective July of this year.
And then you add to it that this is Inclusion Week. Governor Scott has made this Inclusion Week. The Board of Aldermen has signed on to the Declaration of Inclusion and Inclusion Week, as has the Chamber of Commerce. And so there's never a good time to have this conversation. And in fact, the American Psychological Association, the VSA, the VSBA, and the Vermont legislature all agree that Indigenous mascots do harm, and they do harm to all students. And they have formally and officially asked us to stop using Indigenous mascots, going back to 2005. And I also, this event, what happened is tragic and awful, but it also shows us that the mental health of our kids is fragile, even more so from the repercussions of the global pandemic. I don't see how continuing to support the harm that our mascot does will somehow uphold the well-being of our kids. Our current mascot causes depression and anxiety on many levels, as Kevin said. And to continue to use it tells our BIPOC students that they are not as important as other kids, that their well-being is something that can be put on hold for another month. And I'm just not comfortable with that message.
I will say, I feel like right now I'm sitting here and this is deja vu. I can't believe that we're having a conversation considering all that has happened. There's many of other things in the district that are very important to be discussing. Kevin stating that, there are people that do not feel included under the current mascot. Likewise, it will be causing harm to the community and the children who right now are undergoing the laws and they do not want to be called ravens. It's a very subjective area. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to compromise, so to bring it up tonight, all nights, when we have shown there has been no ability to compromise, just is very disheartening. It's disgusting to me. We're not here for the students tonight, and that's all I'm going to say on that matter.
Sarah?
I agree that right now is really tough. It's been really tough at my house this week. And I do feel like putting this off this month, the purpose behind that was so that this didn't happen because of the current situation going on and the mood that people are in right now. So out of respect for that, I would have preferred that we could have done it quickly without discussion, but the rules permit discussion, so we're having discussion. It is not deja vu to me because I have found that this discussion has been very polite and kind, and everybody's listening to everybody, and everybody's being able to say what they want to say, and that's encouraging. But I think it's very important to remember that we were voted here as advocates for students and teachers. And for myself, that was the most important thing, was the students and the teachers. And right now, my heart is with the students and the teachers. And I would prefer not to talk about a divisive subject in this meeting. And I know that there's so much good in changing it, and I know that there's so much division in the way that it's been done and the way that it's going to have to go, but right now I feel it's very painful to have to talk about these kinds of things right now. And I agree that moving it to June and setting up the time to talk about it, we have plenty of time for everybody to talk about it and get the information they need, and we can have a good conversation like we're having here in June when emotions are off the table and we're feeling a little more ready to tackle a big subject. So I agree that we should hold off till June.
Is there anyone else that hasn't spoken yet that would like to speak? No? Mary Beth? Oh, sorry, Courtney?
No, go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're first.
Okay.
I just wanted to echo what Sarah said, and and I think maybe the point of my motion was to not have this conversation tonight and to, but have it in June. I think we are, it's probably not saying much, but we are a more united board than boards have been in the past, and I think we can use that to our advantage to do, to use whatever change we make to the school branding as a springboard for real change. And I do just think June is the right time for that, and so I do think it's a good compromise between what we're trying to do. We get a little more time to research and educate and have good conversations, but we're also hopefully sending a message to our BIPOC and other marginalized students and saying, we are here for you and we hear you, we just need a little more time to educate each other and maybe come together on a solution to this that's actually not going to end up in the back and forth, Tricia. So, I think we're all here for the right reasons. That's all. Courtney?
Kind of echo off what Mary Beth was saying. I think everyone comes here with the intent to help kids. No one comes here with a bad intention or to hurt anybody, any teacher, any student. I think change takes time, and I think we've started as a board talking to each other and listening to each other with the intent to hear and understand. And I think in order for us to do what's right for the children and the teachers, we need to do more of that. Listening with the intent to understand, come together to collaborate, and we haven't had the time to do that, to really hear each other, so that we can come together as a group and do what's right collaboratively instead of it being divisive and fighting. And I think if we had more time to do that, it would be better for us, for the students, and for the teachers. So I think a little more time would be in the best interest of everyone.
Charlie? I might as well say something. I just, for me, I feel like there's so many people here that want more time. I don't know why we can't do that. Like, why can't we work together and give the respect to some of the board members if they're asking for some time and we have the time? We're not trying to be disrespectful by putting this off for another month or so, but I'm disappointed that this conversation has lasted this long, to be honest with you. So that's all I wanted to say. Just, why can't we collaborate a little bit better going forward?
Okay, so the amended motion on the floor is to remove the item 8A, mascot imagery, school branding, to remove it and place it on our June, which I don't know what the date is, or June 14th meeting. So, all those in favor? Five? Did you have your hand up? Oh, I'm sorry, I was writing. In favor of the amended motion to delay the mascot topic until June 14th school board meeting. So there's 4, yes? Opposed? I guess I'm confused, because is the no doesn't come up at all? We're voting on the amended motion, which postpones it until the June agenda. Okay. So yay, you want it moved to June? Okay. No, you don't want it moved to June. Thank you.
Okay, but what about my motion?
We take that up after, if this motion does not carry.
So-
This
so-
motion has precedence.
So just
So
to
if this
clar-
motion passes,
So just a question on that. My motion was till the end of the school year, meaning we would discuss it at the July meeting. So, I mean, there's a month difference here that we're talking about. But, so a no vote says, no, you don't want it postponed at all?
you're voting on the amendment. You're saying, no, you don't want it on the June meeting.
Okay.
But that would leave it where it is unless another motion is taken
Well,
up.
and I have my motion pending still, correct?
If hers doesn't.
If hers doesn't pass. This one takes precedent. So, once again, the motion on the floor is to move the mascot imagery and school branding off tonight's agenda and move it to the June 14th agenda. All those in favor? 4. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So motion fails. So, we're back to, the amended motion fails, so we are back to the original motion. So the motion on the floor is to remove the mascot imagery and school branding agenda item from the agenda. We do not have a July meeting, so I don't know that that motion works.
You do have the power, though, to create a meeting as a president. Do you not?
It's out of respect also for the administrative schedules and vacations, so it's something that could be discussed, but
Well, then I can amend mine to the August meeting.
I'll second that, to give us a chance to have a conversation. The next month, it just, as you,
okay, so the new amended motion is to remove it from the agenda and move it to the August meeting.
So, can we discuss that now?
Yes.
So are you suggesting that we'll meet between now and whenever we can meet in August to try and resolve differences here?
it's not that I don't respect the students. I mean, if somebody could clone the conversation that Mary Beth and I had the other day. There's so many emotions, and compromise to an extent has to happen. And we need, as a group, figure out truly, we're saying, these students are hurt, and these students are hurt, and coming up with a way, the overall thing is to educate. And at this point in time, the last three things that have really affected our city, there's been no real education piece. So if we can table it, just have some conversations, create an ad hoc committee to have this conversation where it's a little less formal, to really get to where we need to get this issue. It needs to end at some point with, obviously, not everybody is going to be happy, but we need to get to a point where we can finally move on and not go back and forth with this dog and pony show, depending on who's on the board, what's going to happen. And so we've never done that. In 2 years, that has not happened. Let's have civil conversations, because we can. We can show the students that we can have civil conversations and that we care about them. And I agree, this conversation has went on far too long. But I would gladly second Karen's motion and, just have conversation throughout the summer.
I would support the motion if it included the meetings that you're talking about. Putting it off to August with no plan is not going to be okay by me.
I 100% agree with you, and Mary Beth, was that not a huge part of our conversation, was the education piece,
Well,
meetings?
if I may continue.
Sorry, I should have.
The problem we have is that all our meetings need to be public.
That's fine,
Okay.
but it's not as formal as this.
So are you
We don't-
suggesting that we develop a committee,
Yes.
and that committee would meet before the end of the school year?
Yes. And yes.
So, if I may ask the board, is that a possibility?
Do we have to discuss the motion at hand at this point, or no? Can we have discussion?
Well, I'm still
about that?
concerned about the motion, and
The motion at hand is what he is
it's
discussing.
not okay as it is for me.
How about the equity committee? If it was referred to equity committee?
What is the equity?
The equity committee is not a board committee.
No.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's a good idea, but no. So, I guess what I'd like to say is, I can support this, I can support putting it off if we have set in place what we're going to do in the meantime, because we need to not just put it off.
Can I amend Karen's motion?
Yeah, or do we just keep doing amended I'm not sure how the process works.
Kathy has a chance to speak now. We're speaking on the amended motion of moving it to August.
We have an amended motion now.
Yes,
Karen
because I changed it to
amended her
August since we don't
motion.
have the July meeting.
Okay.
So it did pass Vermont legislators. So it is very likely to go into effect in July of 2022. And we have a chance right now to get out ahead of it, to do the right thing, and work with the rest of the city who's already on the side of inclusion, and the state. So I mean, which part, it's pretty clear what we have to do. So I don't see the logic in having the conversations in August when it's going to go into effect before August.
Okay, Beth? Okay, I'll circle back to you after everyone has a chance.
I'm also just a little not okay with us still talking about this, but I realize I'm now part of the problem. But I really enjoyed our conversation, Stephanie. I thought it was really productive, and we were really listening to each other. My intent was to push it to June and motion to create an ad hoc committee then, work with people to see if that was going to work, to create this plan to educate moving forward. So that, you know, I mean, but it was part of this whole, okay, let's just take it away from today because feels ugly. Let's go to June, and in June, keep the change maybe a little open-ended and create a committee. So I really thought that's what we had talked about. So that's all. I just wanted to clarify what that was, and that's my intent, is to let's get out in front of it in June, make the change, and then create all these great things that I know we're all super, super capable of because we're all here for the right reasons. Yep. That's it.
Karen?
Well, for myself, again, I have not read whatever the bill is or what's been approved, and I think that should certainly have been provided to the rest of the board when this was set on the agenda, which we did not receive. You're asking us to discuss an issue that we don't even have knowledge as to what the law says. Does the law say you've got to set, by July 1, you've got to have a mascot that no one is offended by? And that is completely impossible. And I feel like some of us are being guilted in to saying if you don't agree to do this tonight, then you are not inclusive and you do not support all of our students. And that is not the case. But I think, again, we have to look at all of the students. I received numerous emails and phone calls regarding this issue today. People being upset, feeling that this was a totally inappropriate time for this to be discussed, and that, again, the governor had not signed it. We don't have a copy of it. People would like to know what it is they're discussing. And I think that is only fair to everyone, that you've had the opportunity. I would not sign any legal document if I didn't have a copy of the document in front of me to review it. And I think that's what we're being asked to do.
So just to be clear, the agenda was made well before the incident with the student. So there was no intent behind that. And to assimilate that there was is very harmful.
And I'm not saying...
And the timing was to do with this being the declared inclusion week of the state. It is not tied to the legislation. It is simply an action that the board has already taken twice without legislation. So there was no requirement that legislation need to be in place to have this discussion.
But why would we have the discussion when we know legislation is out there, that we would do something that then we get the legislation and it's, what we've done is totally contrary to what the statute says. So I think that's why this is all premature, and I did contact you last week when I received the agenda and discuss with you that this was a bit premature, that I had not received a copy of the statute, and at that point when I emailed you, the House hadn't even, or the Senate had not even approved it. So that's why I feel that it was very premature. And I don't see what the rush is to do this tonight without the written information that we need.
Anyone else? So the motion on the floor is to delay this until August. So,
Propose an amendment?
I call the question.
Okay.
okay, so the motion on the floor is to delay the mascot imagery and school branding discussion until August. All those in favor? 4. All those opposed? 5. Motion fails. So we are back to where we started.
I'd like to do an amendment, or I'd like to make a motion. I would like to put a motion on the floor that we delay this until our August meeting, and in the meantime, have a committee created by the chair to have discussion and get us all on the somewhat same page, and including the education aspect and other things that we can do to help in make our students all feel inclusive.
Second.
Any comments? So the motion on the floor now is to delay till August with the creation of an ad hoc committee. All those in favor? Five opposed? 4. Motion carries.
I did have one other thing on the agenda. I would like policy 4250 removed from the consent agenda and referred back to the policy committee. This is the one, the policy that relates to the evaluation of the superintendent, and included in there is the language that the only ones who can set agenda items are the chair and the superintendent, and the chair does not have to recognize any motion or agenda items proposed by any other commissioner. I feel that we're all equally commissioners, and that by limiting that to 2 people, that is giving too much power to 2 people. And I think there was an example where the mascot issue was not put on the agenda back in January when the public was told it would be. And then tonight, the fact that this was put on the agenda without any discussion with the rest of the board as to the timing of this and the educational piece for all of us. So that's why I'm requesting that it be referred back to the policy committee.
Which policy was it that you wanted
It's
to do?
4250.
It's the first reading, it's not on the consent agenda. You're talking about
Oh,
committee reports?
Right, I'm sorry.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor of removing 4250?
Yeah.
Sorry, Kevin?
Is it?
I'm looking at 4250, and it's just about the
No,
evaluation of the
okay, I must have the
superintendent.
wrong number here.
It's the first reading, we can still discuss it, no matter, regardless, in policy, right?
But not if someone motions to remove it. Out of the interest of time, that's in the committee report for a first reading, so could we maybe move ahead with our
Certainly.
agenda?
So we can discuss it at the next committee meeting?
Or once she identifies the policy, we
Right.
can discuss it with the policy committee report. And it's first reading, so it could always be discussed anyways. So, could I have a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of 8A?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so, up first is our consent agenda with our previous minutes, personnel memo 631, and the addendum, and the policies for the second reading as listed. Northeast Primary School roof repair bid and Chromebook bid are all on the consent agenda. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second? And all those in favor? Aye. And opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next up, we have communications, and the board is in receipt of a letter. Clerk will read.
I have a letter dated March 30th, 2022. Dear Commissioners, on behalf of Rutland Rocks Curling Club, I just wanted to take a moment to share our thoughts about the kids from Rutland Middle School who participated in a Learn to Curl session with our club during their Lifetime Sports program this past winter. The RMS students were very polite, attentive, and engaged, and showed an adventurous spirit in trying out something new. Some of the students even worked on their skills right through lunchtime and played a short game. All of our volunteer members were very impressed and had a great time teaching the basics of the game. Kudos also to the middle school staff who planned and implemented this program with the kids. They are doing a great job. Best wishes, Matt Olwinick, Rutland Rocks Curling Club.
Okay, thank you. And we did not have anyone sign the sheet for public comment. So next up, we have our school program updates. So I'll turn it over to a student rep.
A group of Maple students collected over 200 pounds of trash for Green Up Day with the support of Mrs. Wallstrom and Mrs. Clutie. This was no small feat and showed a great deal of determination and perseverance from these students. Several classes are planting spring seeds and are journaling the growth of these seeds to meet English standards. Ms. Pinson also included a field trip to Boardman Hill Farm where her students got to hear Greg Cox speak about his experience farming. To learn about the history of Cinco de Mayo, which is a celebration of the Mexican victory over France, our French and Spanish culture classes hosted 3 competitions: a soccer game, a Kahoot, and a bake-off corn gelatos. Our Saturday tutoring program has moved to Rutland High School in an effort to support our 8th grade students as they transition on to 9th grade. Saturday tutoring has served approximately 17 students with a total of 100 hours. Teachers have seen an increase in grades and self-esteem over these past few months of tutoring. ASC will be hosting its first Health and Sustainability Fair this Saturday from 10 to 12. Come learn about our sustainability efforts, meet our valued community partners, and learn ways you can make a difference in our very own community. Please come with an open mind and be prepared to enjoy healthy activities as a family on our campus. We have bikes and helmets available for accessing the pump track and discs available for our 9-hole course. We are super excited to have Arson Skate Shop on campus providing skate instruction in our own gym to all ages. We will also auction off 3 complete skateboards sponsored by OVX and Stewart's, has provided ice cream for all. At Rutland High School, students are gearing up for this year's Yes Plan. We have made course selections for Yes Plan, and we are pleased to announce that Yes Plan is making a comeback after a 2-year hiatus. Juniors and seniors enjoyed prom last weekend at Killington Grand Hotel. Over 300 students attended. Freshman dance is also coming up this Friday for 9th and 10th grades. AP exams are underway and will be completed by the end of the week. Thank you to Gen Pros and the Guidance Department for making this possible. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you, Lauren. All right, so.
Good question.
Yes.
In the talking about Cinco de Mayo celebration,
Yes.
there were 3 events, and one was a Kahoot.
A Kahoot? I don't know.
You know what that is?
I don't.
Is it the quiz thing?
Not with a Kahoot.
It's the quiz, it's a quiz thing.
No, it says Kahoot, like no T.
Oh.
So I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either.
Oh, it's a Kahoot. So it's like it's the game you play, and it's like a Jeopardy almost type of game. And you like have choices on the wall, and it's like you pick whichever one.
Oh, okay, okay,
It's like a competition. Yeah.
okay.
You get stats, keeps your
We
stats.
should have a game.
I was like a leaderboard at the end.
Can we do it?
Make a motion.
Let's learn about our, let's use those to educate each other on the topic we're going to address in August. How about that?
All right, so next up on the agenda is plans for summer building and grounds work. So we have Glenn coming up to the table here to give us an update. Oh, yeah, yeah.
All of them? Yeah.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to report out on our summer ground projects. It's going to be a very busy summer, so I have 9 slides basically to go through tonight, covered by building. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to interrupt me at any time. I'm happy to answer questions throughout the presentation or at the end, so jump right into it. So basically, in summary, operating and maintaining our buildings, there's 5 basic areas. First is transportation. Throughout the summer, we continue to provide transportation for summer programs. There's about 20 approximately routes scheduled right now. That number may increase as programs are added. So if you look at 20 daily routes, that compares about a third. So on a normal school year, we have about 60 routes, which we perform throughout the day. That's AM, PM, and including tapestry. So summer, we stay pretty busy with busing as well. The second area is our general maintenance and painting. Throughout the summer, we stay pretty busy with work orders as we're catching up on things that maybe we weren't able to do as the year went on. We're doing small painting projects as we are available. Our bus drivers perform the painting. So we've got 2 or 3 dedicated painters that comprise our painting team that also drive buses. Our maintenance team, our maintenance workload particularly gets heavy as you get towards the end of August as teachers return, because there's a lot of teachers that have adjustments to their classroom, maybe needs a whiteboard hung or moved around, so we get pretty heavy in August when it comes to maintenance work orders. Our lawn and grounds care, we do all of that internally. As you may know, again, bus drivers perform our lawn care throughout the year. They'll do a route in the morning, and then usually go between 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock in the afternoon, hop back on a bus. So we have a great dedicated drivers there that do lawn care as well. Landscaping is also done internally, so we have our bus aides. We have 4 bus aides that are just amazing. They do the weeding, they put out mulch, they'll plant flowers, so it's a really dedicated crew there as well. So a lot gets done. The only thing we do contract some fertilizing for our field hockey fields and to keep some of our fields up, but everything else is done in-house. So the 4th area is custodial, so the detail cleaning of each classroom is done throughout the buildings. That's refinishing the floors, that's high dusting, cleaning, emptying every room out, waxing if the floors require waxing. Our custodial crew just does an amazing job, and they really work as a team. So you see some of these buildings where they're just all 4 of them, or however many people are in the building, are doing the whole floor all at the same time. So it's a nice team clean approach. Our gym floors are refinished each year. We do have a flooring contractor that does those, Keep Gym, and then the high school gym as well. And then finally, our building projects, which I'll get into, which will be the remainder of the presentation here. So Northeast Primary School, this was just approved in the consent agenda. We are hoping to have Vermont Roofing replace this summer. Literally, tomorrow we're going to sign the contract and they're going to order materials, and it'll be a race to get this stuff in because there's a long lead time on all materials right now, so fingers crossed that we can get this in. Vermont Roofing is a good partner, so I think that they can get it done and we'll be ready for school there. It's over the 2nd grade wing, it's 10,000 square feet. This has been some active leaks in that classroom for a long time during heavy rain, so the teachers and the students will be very happy to not have rain on the inside. At the intermediate school, there's some interior painting of the stairwells, And the exterior, some repairs that were required on the masonry and steps. Interior painting of the stairwells, we've got a lot of older, it's the wrought iron metal, so it's like highly detailed. It's original 1918, but with salt deterioration that's happened over the years, we need to get that covered before any rust and deterioration occurs on the Library Avenue and then the Church Street entrance in particular. And then there's a couple more stairwells. So if you walk through the stairwells at the intermediate school, you're going to see phases of different paint. Our goal this summer is to get it all painted the same color, and it's all going to be, looking pretty good. So that's our goal. And outside on Library Avenue, I've got some pictures that I shared with the building committee on the most recent building committee. There's some masonry and marble steps on Library Avenue that have deteriorated pretty badly. So with salt and then maybe some the snow and ice melt, some bricks have chipped, and during an April break, I kind of did an inspection and walked around the buildings, and this kind of caught my eye. So I reached out to a couple of masons, and they were like, wow, this is something that we really need to be attentive to. So I have some calls out. We're still assessing this on what we're going to do moving forward, but I will continue to report that out to the board as we come up with a plan. But we're going to work on getting a plan this summer, so we can address that.
Ron, I have a quick question.
Yes.
We had talked about at the building committee meeting, putting like caution signs, like blocking those off. I drove by today and I noticed those had not been done. Do you have a time frame as when you're going to get those blocked off, since it is such a concern?
Yeah, it was going to get done this week, actually. What we're going to do is trim up the weeds that are sort of growing. I had some treatment that was going to be done. We're going to trim that, and then we'll get it done this week, actually by Friday for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. At the middle school, another thing that occurred this year was the flooding of the basement, as I've reported. So at the rear of the building, we're going to do some regrading and excavation work in order to create a beam, like a berm, a channel that will divert the melting snow and ice that caused the flooding in the basement at the middle school. This project really is just going to involve a couple of days of grading and adding some stone to redirect the water, and then we'll add a French drain down, so we'll have kind of a double protection so that water doesn't enter into the basement. If time allows, on our carpet removal project, we do have a couple areas there, the locker rooms, and then room 112, which has carpet that we can hopefully tackle at the very end of our carpet project, which I'll talk about at the end here. So we're hoping to get that done, and as well as some interior painting of some classrooms. We've been trying to get those school classrooms caught up, because they were sort of in the same state where every classroom was painted a little bit differently. We're trying to get those all looking good. At Allen Street, we've got 4 very important improvements inside and outside. The exterior of the building will be painted. This is a capital project identified in our 2020 Facilities Condition Assessment. If you walk that building, there's a lot of the stow, which is, the stow is like a stucco finish with a styrofoam. The stove is detached, so that needs to be patched. If you look at the front, that cantaloupe color will go away. We'll get it looking good, and we'll replace the windows. So, I'm sorry, thank you. Thanks, Ron. Oh, too behind. So building will be painted, and then some of the caulk has deteriorated, so we're going to basically button that up to get it waterproof, and then it'll be painted. The 18 broken windows will be replaced this summer. There's another thing that's a long lead time, so we're going to get those ordered, hopefully get those completed by the end of July, in time for school to open back up. The timing of that too is we're hoping to get the windows before the painting, but if we don't, but we'll be able to work around it. The third project is Otter Creek Engineering has completed the final design for a water mitigation project. This is an ESSER federal grant-funded project, and the goal here is to prevent water from entering the basement mechanical space. This has kind of been going on for a while based on the slope and water grade there. So what we're going to do is basically add a French drain. We're going to connect that French drain to a storm drain, and then we're going to regrade the parking lot so that that water is no longer entering into the mechanical space. It's been going on for a while, but it's just basically based on the layout and the design of the building there. So that hopefully we'll get that done by the end of summer. There may be some pavement that lingers based on the availability of pavers, but the bulk of the excavation will be done before school starts. And then finally, at Allen Street, we're going to replace the fire alarm system. So this was another item that was identified in our facilities condition assessment. It's one of the things that I prioritized. We replaced the fire alarm here in Longfellow last year. Hopefully, we can get the intermediate school fire alarm. These are things that I think are primary to the safety of the student and preserving our buildings. So at Allen Street, that fire alarm is a couple years past its useful life, so we're going to get that replaced this summer as well. It basically updates it to a zone, from a zone system to an addressable system. So like if the fire alarm goes off, the fire department knows like exactly where a fire is or exactly where heat or smoke is, rather than just saying, hey, it's on that end of the building. So I think those are very important upgrades. All right, as I mentioned, the carpet project at the high school. This is going to be a pretty intensive project this summer. We're going to remove all the carpet in the high school and Stafford. We're going to replace it with a luxury vinyl tile or luxury vinyl plank. The product we're using is like a 30-year maintenance-free product, so you're not going to have to wax it. You're just going to have to scrub it and mop it to maintain it. But this is also a federally funded project, so we're basically, $190,000 of funds are being provided by the government, federal government. There's no cost to taxpayers to get this done. It's a great project. It's going to take approximately 6 weeks, beginning July 5th, including Stafford. But that will include 14 classrooms, our auditorium, our fine arts wing, guidance and support services offices, and at Stafford, the Digital Arts and Learning Lab Center. So a lot there. And then, as I mentioned, the middle school, there's a couple of rooms there that we're hoping to either tack on, either at the very end or possibly at the beginning. So you look at that, that's a lot of work for not only our installer, but also for our custodial maintenance staff, because they will have to move every room out and then move it back in. You think of things like band rooms or the auditorium, you're taking all of those seats out of the auditorium. Each individual seat is bolted to the ground, so everything's got to be taken out and then put back in. So it's going to be like it'll have to be a very well-oiled machine, but I have nothing but confidence in our maintenance staff and our custodial staff at the high school especially. They're a great group of people. And then, let's see. All right. And then last is a couple of planning and assessment projects. So these are projects that are leading into a larger project. We mentioned, and it was approved by the board last month, the HVAC and air quality study. This is Johnson Controls is basically bringing in Underwriters Laboratory to conduct a air quality study, and then they're going to inspect all of our HVAC equipment. We're going to take this information, and then we're going to use our facilities condition assessment, which was done in 2020, and then we're going to build from that information a report, and it'll basically guide us on how we can spend future ESSER dollars or our ESSER funds. So we know, for example, there are some things we know for sure, like there are a couple air handlers at Allen Street that definitely need replacing. There's some air handler in the heat at the high school cafeteria. These are things that we know for sure. But then also with the air quality study and the facilities condition assessment, it'll tell us where we can upgrade controls or upgrade air handlers to improve the airflow and the air efficiency and turnover in our buildings for our students. Again, the goal was basically to provide and prevent future pandemics. So anything we can do that keeps air turned over and provide a better environment, that's a goal there. And then last, our stormwater management mandate. This was a state mandate that was passed a few years ago that basically stated that any properties that had impermeable surfaces over 3 acres or more, we have to treat the stormwater before it goes into any runoff or storm drain. So those are the three areas there are northeast, the Rutland High School / Stafford campus, and then Rutland Intermediate Middle School campus. So at each of those properties, we have, if you count the roofs, if you count the parking lot, you have, well, at northeast, it's right at like 3 acres. So we're kind of in the process of whether or not that is like, which way we want to go. It's like 2.99, literally. throw in some discussions there, where that project will go. But definitely at middle school and intermediate school within the high school, this is basically, as I reported, you're catching it and putting it into a detention basin or treating the water so that it treats the water before it runs directly into the storm drain or, the nearby creek. So that's a state mandate that we're working with. The good news there, as I've reported, is all of these projects, this project study and this engineering study is all paid for from the state. So it's at no cost to the district or local taxpayers. So the next phase from that is once the study's done, to do the construction, and I can report more on that in the coming months when we find out what's next. So, does anyone have any questions on any of that?
I do. I'm just curious, what color you have selected, or if you guys are in the process of figuring out for the Elm Street campus?
Well, me and Scott are going to flip a coin. Scott is working with his team. He's got some great colors picked out.
But running through some virtual, so you make a good decision that we were happy with for a lot of years?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Karen?
I just had a question regarding the air quality assessment. Is that expected to be completed during the summer, or?
We're hoping to have it completed by the end of this before school year, yes.
Okay.
They can continue to do assessments because if they're, most of the mechanical spaces, they might even start earlier. Probably not, but they would be going into mechanical spaces to looking at equipment.
So they could do that when students
They
are?
can do that when students are
Okay.
there, and even the airflow testing, they can do that when students are there.
Okay, thank you.
No?
Can I just add in, I want to compliment and commend the work that Glenn, Rob, Abby Brodowski back there, and Ted are doing to try to align the facilities assessment with our ESSER healthy buildings goals and using federal money to address that. So that it won't be coming out of local money. This is all our federal ESSER money.
That's great, right? All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
Right, so next item on the agenda is the Stafford Technical Center Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, and we have Melissa Connor and Kate Bosnich.
Can I introduce you? Okay. We have a formula that we have to follow by Perkins rules, right? Good idea. I'm going to read this to make sure we're checking all the boxes. So we are... This is going to talk about topics regarding the Carl Perkins federal grant. Every tech center now has to complete a comprehensive local needs assessment every 2 years. So I've been part of this process for over the entire year, as well as board member Ann Dages, and now board member Sarah Atkins-Douglas. So we've been monitoring this work, it's important to say. This work has been part of the discussion that Stafford Program Committee has done and the Stafford RAB, the Regional Advisory Board. So they've been working on that all through the year. The process requires that Stafford report to this board on the outcomes of the CLNA, and Melissa's going to lead us through the process. We're going to consider the questions of the assessment, and that's required by law in order to gain the federal money. So I think I said everything I had to say, right?
All right, well, thank you. As Bill introduced, this is a requirement of the Purpose 5, which is a huge grant fund for us. Each year, we get approximately just under $400,000 that goes, that basically offsets our budget. This last year, we received close to $500,000, so obviously it was a big portion of our budget. So with the new legislation, we are required to do this comprehensive local needs assessment every 2 years. If you've ever been part of a NEAS decennial visit, this is that on steroids is how I describe it, because it's really intensive. And I will apologize in advance because we're going to throw a lot of data at you tonight. And if you have any questions after the vote, please feel free to ask. So in your board packet, we provided 2 documents to you. One was a memo outlining a lot of kind of the requirements of this, as well as those series of questions that Bill mentioned. Federally, we are required to share those questions as the federal government has written them, and our hopes is to address that through our presentation. And we did reference the slide numbers of the presentation, so if you want to follow along for you. So, there are 6 areas in which we are required to report on and to complete this CLA. first one is on student performance against Perkins accountability measures. Then we get into alignment with the labor market needs of our region. We also have to look at the size, scope, and quality of each of those programs, along with the implementation towards programs of study for each of our programs. We have to look at the recruitment and retention of qualified staff at our center, and as well as progress towards the implementation of equity and access to each of our programs. So what Kate and I are going to do is to walk you through each of those 6 areas in as succinct of a fashion as possible. Again, this is a year's worth of work. We had over 600 stakeholders involved, community members and partners in the process. It was a self-reflective process for our faculty, our students, parents, alumni, employers in the region, and just some of the school board members participated by completing surveys. So we appreciate all of those people participating so that we could make this the best. So on the slide that you're looking at on the screen, we have 10 federal indicators, and that's a lot of information, 10 federal indicators that we are measured against. And the way this works is that the state of Vermont has to negotiate with the U.S. Department of Education in these 10 areas about what the state is going to have for a benchmark each year. And then the state in turn negotiates with each tech center. And so we have a target that we have to meet over a course of 5 years. And so they break it down incrementally. The year that we are being assessed on, I just want to mention, was the 2021 school year. As if you remembered, we were in the middle of COVID protocols. We were in a hybrid fashion, and our students were in the building basically and so as a tech center, you can imagine that had definitely an impact. What I'm very proud to say is that of all of those benchmarks, Stafford did meet all of the targets that have been set by the state. The requirement was that we come within 90% of that negotiated target, and we met every single one of those targets. So during a hybrid year, during a pandemic, that was pretty incredible, but it shows the dedication of the students and staff. The one area that the state gave every tech center a waiver on was work-based learning. Because of COVID, a lot of workplaces weren't accepting students, and we had a protocol in which we were not placing students out in different locations, so everyone was given kind of a waiver on that one area. So what I want to do is to walk you through just a couple of the points. We're not going to go through the entire spreadsheet that you have. So while we met all of the targets center-wide, you'll see that there's some yellow highlights, and this is by program, where individual programs did not meet the targets. And so what that means as part of our comprehensive local needs assessment in our Perkins application, we have to figure out how we are going to use the funding to address some of these areas within the specific programs. So for instance, in auto body, they did not meet the targets in English language arts and math. So we will take our efforts and we will take interventionists with math and English, and they will be working with the programs and going in and actually working with the students and the instructor on making sure that we're hitting those targets that we need to. In areas of post-program placement, that is looking at students, are they continuing when they finish our program to study that area either at the post-secondary level, or are they entering into a workforce that's related to the field of study? So that one is a little bit harder to target because we are talking teenagers, and what they think they want to do today and what they want to do tomorrow can be different. So that is something that, I think we'll always struggle with, and it's something that through our career development work, which is part of our Perkins plan, we're really trying to help students really navigate those decisions in life and figuring out what the right path is and then the steps to get them there. It also looks at 4-year and 6-year graduation rates. Our students actually completing high school on time, and as you can see, we did well in those areas. The ELA in math, I wanted to point out, that is through a state assessment that they have determined through the ACT, which is the Workpiece Assessment. And so our students take that twice a year. So they have to take it in the fall when they enter, and then in the spring before they leave. And we're allowed to take the better of the 2 scores and report that to the state. We're finding with high school students, they tend to do better in the fall than they do in the spring, because in the spring they tend to be thinking about other things. And there's a lot of tests with SATs and things like that time of year. But we are allowed that caveat. So again, we're going to be looking at each of the programs that have a yellow highlight. The other colorful highlights that you'll see are around what we call Tier 2 IRCs. And Tier 2 IRCs are industry-recognized credentials. These are determined for every one of our programs by the Department of Labor and the Agency of Education. And these are credentials such as the Licensed Nursing Assistant for our health career students. It is something that a typical high school student would not have when they're entering the workforce. So there are certain industry-recognized credentials that are pretty common. So a basic CPR or first aid, that is common that a high school student may have that entering, but an LNA would not be. So a Tier 1 would be that basic CPR, like AED, and then you would have the LNA, which would be considered a Tier 2. So we have to have, within any program that is highlighted in blue, those programs are required to have a Tier 2 IRC. So our welding students have the American Welding Society welding qualifications. We have, when you look at auto body and auto tech, they have the ASC certifications for mechanics, which are typically part of, you earn those within 6 months of employment as an entry-level employee. So those are things that are there. If there is a purple highlight, it is requiring that that program offer college credit as part of the curriculum, so the students are earning college credit, either through the Vermont State College system or another. And that is, our teachers become certified to teach those courses and are teaching them as part of the daytime program. So it's embedded right within the program. And then those programs that are highlighted with green, those, the local program advisory committee is allowed to choose which is the better offering for the students. Our goal is to have both in every program, but the highlight shows what is required. So.
Can I ask a quick question? So on the blue, for example, can you just explain what that means? So there's like a 0% in the blue, so what does that mean?
So in the 0, again, remembering this was during COVID, we were not able to have, so the ASC certification, we have to have an outside organization come in and certify our students. And because of COVID protocols, we were not allowed to have outside organizations coming in at that time. So 0% of our students received that in that program. But the blue just means that it's a required component, a Tier 2 IRC is required for that program. Center-wide, there was many certifications that were able to be done, whether it's a computerized certification or we were able to, near the end of the year, like our LNA exam, for instance, by the time we got to the end of the school year, we had opened up to allow outside organizations to come in, so we were able. So center-wide, we met the target, but some programs did not meet the target, if that makes sense. So on the next page, this gets into labor market. And so at the start of the school year, the Agency of Education and the Department of Labor identified tech center programs in Vermont as either meeting employment needs in the state of Vermont, as maybes or as no's. And so when we received this report, we were, obviously, you can see by the yellow, our culinary arts, digital arts, and our criminal justice program and video communications. The Department of Labor said, these are subjective, and you need to prove to us that there is a demand for these programs. Cosmetology, which I will say is one of our most popular programs and has one of the largest wait lists, the Department of Labor was saying that there's not a market for this program in the state of Vermont. And again, you have to prove to us that there is a market. So we had to go through a series of surveys with industry partners, and it had to be outside of the normal partners that we work with. We had to do a lot of research on labor market stats about job growth, and we had to document, and we have to upload as part of our application all the documentation to show that our programs are viable and they are needed in our region. And the region is identified, it could be Rutland County, it could be statewide, depending on what the program is. And so we were able to, the criteria that they looked at was, does it offer that Tier 2 and/or college credit? Is it meeting industry workplace skills in English language arts and math? And I mentioned the Workpiece testing a little while ago. They work with ONET, and they have identified for each career pathway what the minimum required score is for each of those tests that they offer and that our students take. And so we had to look back at our score reports and document that our students met the industry standard for scores. And so we were able to do that. So if there's an X in the box, that means that our students for FY21, again, that hybrid COVID year, met the standard for that industry. We also had to demonstrate that students were leaving our programs and going into these fields and continuing their study. We have to, the benchmark is that 75% of our students that are leaving our program have to enter into the field, either in post-secondary or into the workforce related to the field. And then we also had to show a livable wage, and the Department of Labor identified that as $19 an hour. And so through Wendy Morse with the Department of Labor, she helped us pull some stats from the state database, and we were able to document that. There's a couple of programs within culinary arts and cosmetology that with tips, which is obviously a huge part of those industries, it does get those to the livable wage. And then the final one is the high demand in the region. And what we basically had to show is that we are not oversaturating the market with students in these fields. And so we had to show that the number of students that we are producing each year is now not out measuring the number of job openings in the year. And so we were able to prove, and we'll be sending all of this into the state, that all of our programs met the LMI criteria and should be sustained. Yes.
Just elaborate on asking about the high demand. So do you send out some sort of questionnaire? And then they have to, and can you just elaborate just a little on what that entails?
We look at the labor market information that the Department of Labor provides, and they show job growth from 2018 to 2028, along with the projected number of jobs that each industry will grow each year. We also were required to send out surveys to industry members, so for each of these areas, for employers, and asking, how many job openings do you typically have in a year? What's your average starting pay for an entry-level position? What certifications are you looking for? So we had to do that for each of our fields. And again, we have program advisory committees that are actively involved. We were not allowed to survey those people that were actively involved. We had to go beyond that.
And do you have to get so much of a response?
We had to have a 50% response rate. So if we sent out 50 surveys, we had to have at least 25 responses for it to count.
Gotcha. And do they provide you with this survey, or do you have to come up with this?
They provided us with, we sent out, I think, 12 in total. We modified language for the different program ones, so there was 12 different surveys. They gave us the language for 6, and then we had to develop the others ourselves. So.
Karen?
My question was just, is that all data just for Vermont only?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was the region, we were not allowed to go beyond Vermont.
That seems a little ridiculous.
Stephanie?
I'm trying to read because I don't have my glasses, so.
It's a little dark.
I don't have my glasses. So in the red where it says programs designated by the Vermont AOE and DOL as not meeting labor market indicators, which I see that being cosmetology. Can you elaborate on that one a little bit, please?
Yeah, so the state is basically, the Department of Labor and the Agency of Education are basically saying that they do not feel that there is a demand for the number of cosmetology programs in the state of Vermont. They're not feeling that students can make that livable wage of $19 an hour. So what we had to do is to go through the process of proving that in our region that these are a viable position for our students. And so we were able to go through the process and prove that. And we'll submit all that documentation to the state. And then they will hopefully approve for us to continue funding in that program. Thank you. I know there's a lot of information. The next page is around size, scope, and quality. So again, we had to examine each of our programs to look at size, scope, and quality. The size was simply, do we have more than 8 students enrolled in the program? And we easily have that for every one of our programs. And then when we look at the scope, we have to look at the state of Vermont just switched for all technical center programs in the state to statewide proficiencies. So it's no longer kind of localized. So now it's statewide. And are we aligned? And so we have been working really hard. Our teachers have been engaged at the state level in making sure that we are aligned, and we are aligned with all of those. We're kind of doing that gap analysis now to figure out the little areas that we need to work on. We have to make sure that we are meeting the industry needs, and I mentioned our program advisory committees. We have over 100 businesses in the local community that are involved in our programs, and they provide us information at regular program advisory committee members about what we need to be looking at for our students and what technology, what software that students need to be trained on so that they are meeting the needs. And so when we met with our program advisory committees, they said that yes, we are meeting the industry standard. And again, we've mentioned the Tier 2 IRCs, college credits. Are we offering those where we should? And the answer was yes. Do all of our programs offer work-based learning opportunities? Again, yes. We're expanding that under Purpose 5. Now, every student has to experience work-based learning. Typically, it's just been our level 2 students where we put out internships, but now we have to, even our first-year students, we have to get them out of what we call career work experience, which is a 30-hour exposure. So we'll be expanding in that area as well. All of our programs connected to a career and technical student organization. At the last meeting, you heard about Skills USA and how well our students did. So that is one example of a career and tech student organization. We also have FFA, we have FCCLA, and then we have the National Technical Honor Society as well. And then when we look at quality, we're looking at the quality of our equipment, technology, and software. You'll see that not every program had an X, which means that the Program Advisory Committee made recommendations on improvements, and as part of our FY23 budget process, which we shared with you back in November and December, we do have an equipment replacement plan and a technology replacement plan to address all of these, and where there are deficits in the next year between grant funding and local budget, those will all be X's within the next year. And then again, the program advisory committees were required to have at least 5 members for each one that represents a diverse set of partners from that industry, and they're required to have at least 2 meetings a year. So again, we met all the requirements there. And then the final area that I'm going to talk about before I turn it over to Kate is our program of study analysis. There were 89 factors that we had to look at for each of our 14 programs, and I was not going to bore you or try to put all that in chart because that's a lot of information. So what I wanted to do is just highlight some of the key areas that have really been a focus and that we'll be focusing on with our programs grant in the coming years. And again, that is alignment with program proficiencies and academic proficiencies. 2 years ago, we hired on a curriculum integrationist, and that has been an integral part of the work that we've been doing at Stafford to make sure that we're meeting proficiency in the areas of Workpiece, there's English, language, arts, and math. Commissioners Kefauver and Dunges were up visiting last week, and they got to see some of that math intervention in action. And the programs that are working with our math instructor, where the math instructor is going into the program, we have seen scores in these areas double. So our construction, which was one of our lowest areas for math scores, is now the 3rd highest at our tech center, up there with engineering and health careers because of the work that is happening. So the interventions that we're putting in place are really helping, and we want to expand those, and the hope is to expand those into the English language arts as well. And again, when we're looking at collaboration between CTE staff, the technical programs and the academic, there was one area where that was unmet. In that program, that is an area that curriculum is changing. There were some stuff to change over, and we're working towards that. But again, green means that we have met the areas, so we try to do it in some simple colors. So overall, we're doing well. We have some areas to work on, and we'll be focusing on. But again, so what I'm going to do now is shift to Kate. As we mentioned, we had several surveys that we had to do with 12 different subgroups of constituents that we had to survey. And what we wanted to do is to highlight some of the key areas that answer some of those federally required questions and share that information with you.
So I'll be talking about the last 2 of the key indicators, the first one being faculty and staff recruitment, retention, and professional development area. So part of this work that we did, we surveyed our faculty and staff, and Perkins 5 requires that we assess where we're at with our recruitment process and our professional development, because we want to hire quality educators to provide the instruction for our students. So I'll go over some of the survey data that we received. And each Friday morning we have a faculty meeting. So we incorporated the survey data into our weekly faculty meetings. And what we did with our student survey data, our parent guardian survey data, and our faculty data, we went through it together. We broke into small groups and then had small group discussion, whole group discussion, and then we went through it, the highs, the lows, and came up with some strategies of, what can we do to improve, what were some strengths, and then we compiled all this evidence and and data, and then shared it with our CLNA review team. So that will help guide our plan as we develop our Perkins grant in the next month or so. It's all when we surveyed our faculty, and again, these were surveys that were provided by the state to have consistency across all CTE centers. So some of the key findings, one of the questions was what keeps you at Stafford, and some of the responses included engaged students, preparing our next generations, my colleagues, quality of students, community partnerships, mission of FCC, what might cause you to leave Stafford, retirement, a better job elsewhere, financially speaking. I hope I never have to think of this, and the stress of the job. And the next two questions will tie into the next slide that I'll go over. What PD professional development opportunities are you looking for? Classes we all do together for college credit, industry-focused opportunities, visit to other CTE centers, classroom management, equity, and I trust admin on this. And another one, suggestions for recruiting new staff for a CTE center. And as you know, we've had some openings in some of our programs, and depending on the program, it can be very difficult to recruit quality instructors and get them from the field. We've had an electrical instructor opening for 2 years now, and it's very challenging to compete with a salary of an electrician in an industry to come to education. So one of the suggestions, have the pay align with industry, partner with industry to create a teaching pipeline, and that's also been tied to, we talked about that in our RAD meeting with the hospital. Broaden where we advise, advertise and recruit from. And so with this, things that we wanted to consider were, okay, for professional development, what does the center do? We already offer. How often are we providing these learning opportunities for our staff? Of the opportunities that have been provided, what worked well, what was received well, and what are our preferences and our needs of our faculty for professional development. And as we know, the last couple of years have been challenging at best. And so the needs of our students and our teachers have increased and have changed. So the needs of the professional development and training have changed as well. So in order to meet our faculty and our students where they're at, we need to provide offerings to help support them. So this slide shows what we've completed in the last few years, pre-pandemic. A lot has been based on the standards-based grading and then incorporating our academic proficiencies into our programs so we can help demonstrate what we're already doing in our technical programs to help support the academic work. And then based on what we've received from our faculty surveys and our other stakeholder surveys, this is what we anticipate for our planned PD. The collaborative teams is based on the PLC model that many of the district schools are already implementing. We have a lot of the systems in place, but we don't have the foundational piece. So we're working together collaboratively, but it's kind of piecemeal together. So we're working to get these negotiated targets and all this data stuff, but we really need the protocols in place. Okay, how do we formalize it so it's consistent? And then the school wellness wheel with the American Research Group, and much of this is supported by the ESSER funds, which Rutland City Public Schools has graciously offered to include us as part of their plan. We do serve 11 different partner schools, so we have been scooped in with Rutland City Public Schools for this 7 years. So that will be helping to support the social emotional learning of our students and staff and creating that supportive culture for our students, and that also ties into our equity work that we're beginning in June and will continue on for next year, because that was also some of the feedback and data that we collected from our student and staff surveys as well as parent guardian. When I say surveys, I really mean the whole 12 million that we gave, but I say students and staff and parents, because that will be the stakeholder group I'm focusing on right now. And then many of our staff, because for the last couple of years, we haven't been able to go out into industry and really our instructors go out into their field and be out with their industry partners and really fine-tune their skills and get up to date on certain systems that they can bring back into the classroom. So that was another a point of interest that the faculty really wanted to get back involved in, so we'll incorporate that and provide that as an option. And then the Vermont Works for Women, we've developed a contract with them that we will start in June with our staff at the end of the school year, and do a half-day workshop to start with some respectful conversations around gender equity, and then lead into some full-year equity workshops with our students and staff around gender equity in CTE and career tech education, and having those conversations and how to have them respectfully. And that will lead into other topics around equity and inclusion. So we're building those foundations to create safe and respectful cultures within Stafford and continue that work. So the sixth category here is, I'm not there. I'm still talking about recruitment. So part of our work is we're an application process for students. So we start with our recruitment process in October for the following school year. So we are a blind admissions application process, and that means with our work, we start with a mailing in October. We work with a company that it's a teaser postcard, and then we do a showcase presentation with our partner schools. And we've really built strong relationships with our area partner schools and their school counseling offices, their special education services, the partner principals, to really, we want to recruit the right students for the right programs for the right reasons, because we want to develop student interest in careers to help them go beyond high school and give them opportunities for the workforce or college. So it's really building those relationships and educating them about what we offer and how it fits into the student's career path beyond high school. So we start this work, it's ongoing. It doesn't just happen in March or November when the applications go out. So this slide is just basically a timeline. So when the applications go out, the priority deadline is December 15th, and our admissions team meets in February, and like I said, we're a blind admissions team, so we don't know if a student's on a student support plan, 504, an IEP, anything like that. All students submit the same materials, so transcripts, attendance records, report cards, and we look at that information. All students come to Stafford and do a program visit. They spend a half day in the program that they are applying for. We have an open house prior to that, so they can move through our program. And then that's where it's really important that we've done the work to build these relationships with our partner schools, because we're trusting that they've met with our students and they understand our entry requirements, because not all of our programs are the same. We have some hard labs that have certain safety requirements that other programs might not have. So again, it's the right student for the right program, because we want all of our students to be successful, and a student that applies to auto body may not be successful in the culinary program. So we want to make sure it's the right fit. I'm sorry, I'm talking really quickly. If anyone has questions, stop me.
She's saying almost everything. Don't need to worry about it.
Okay, so our sixth indicator is improving, our continuing work on improving equity and access for our students. And this is really focusing on creating that culture of inclusion, making sure that all of our students, especially those in the special populations, which is about 10 different subcategories of students, which includes those on qualifying for special education, those who are homeless, our non-traditional students. So in cosmetology, a non-traditional student deemed by the state, the Department of Labor, is a male student, identifies as male. Female is a traditional student in the cosmetology program. So supporting the non-traditional students in our career programs. So making sure that we are providing equal access. So our promotional materials, are they representing all of our students? So we surveyed our students. We surveyed students who attend all of our partner schools, and not necessarily, and we had to survey students who do not attend Stafford. So again, this is where those partnerships with our ascending schools come into play. We were nervous that we weren't going to get students who don't attend Stafford, because why would they fill out some random survey from some school that they don't attend? But we got some really good responses, and we'll go over that in the next slide. But our current students, we filled out the survey, many of the themes, some of the things that came up, we addressed. Have you ever felt discrimination? Do you feel safe when you attend Stafford? Are you engaged in your learning? Have you made connections with your learning that prepares you for college and the workforce beyond high school? And then those students who are attending Vermont High School that we serve, but are not attending Stafford, we wanted to know, what are the barriers, or are there barriers? And what do we do with this information? How do we learn from it? And are there things that we're doing currently that we can change to help increase that access to Stafford? So some of the things that popped up were, my schedule won't allow it, my parents didn't support it, I don't believe CTE coursework will look good on my transcript, I don't want to leave my high school, different things like that. So it's our messaging, our branding, and part of our work that we started, we did work with Dave Watt to create a strategic plan and looking at Stafford and where we want to be in 5 years. And a lot of this work that came out when we surveyed the high school students, talked about our schedule and the message and our recruitment and our middle school outreach. So there's some common themes that we addressed in our strategic plan that also came out with the survey data, which was interesting. And then we surveyed our parents, our current parents and guardians of current students, again around the respect, safety, engagement with instructors, and topics included safe and healthy learning environment, engaging with faculty and staff. Does Stafford offer something beyond what a traditional high school would offer? Do you feel like your child's instructor knows your child, feels safe, and things like that? And so we had some positive responses, and we also realized that we had some things to work on. And then Melissa will end the presentation and tie it all up in the very next call.
So one of the things that we have to do, and the application that we'll be uploading is literally close to 400 pages, and we tried to summarize that for you in 20 minutes. So it was a lot of...
Nice job.
Nice job.
So some of the areas we are going to focus our next couple of years with Perkins on is continuing the academic curriculum integration, because it is showing to be effective. We are going to continue career exploration, again, to help make sure that students are really finding that right career program, so that will not only be at the high school level, but at the middle school level as well. And that ties into the middle school outreach. So we're going to continue that to really help students making a thoughtful decision when they come to Stafford, and hopefully help them when they're leaving Stafford, that they have found the career path and they're not like I was, changing my major in college 5 times to figure out and pay money to do that. We're going to continue working on the programs of study, making sure that all of our programs have rigorous Tier 2 IRCs, as well as helping our instructors get those college credits where they might need them. Supporting the special populations categories, and as Kate mentioned, it's beyond students on special education plans. We're looking at how to support our homeless students who are economically disadvantaged. So it's about 10 categories, and how can we best support them within the programs. Some of the data that we're getting is even disaggregated by those, so that we can really see where those students are and what the needs are. So in looking at that, what we're going to be doing for FY23 and beyond with our Perkins funding is looking at adding some additional academic instructors, particularly in math. We have one math instructor right now, and the work that she's doing is incredible, but in order for us to get to all 14 programs, it's really hard for one teacher to teach the traditional math classes plus do that in program intervention. We're going to be looking at adding additional special education staffing. We have one special educator on staff. Our partner high schools are finding that, just like our district, challenging to hire paraeducators, and so a lot of times our students are not fully supported when they're coming from partner high schools in the way that they should be. So we want to make sure that we're providing them the supports that they need. And really, it'll be a cost savings if the way the special ed funding is for career and tech ed. It would be a cost savings for, as part of the special ed billing that we do, versus them hiring a parent to come to Stafford. And so we're working on some time study work to document that to each of our partner high schools. And then finally, looking at the possibility of adding a flexible pathway coordinator, which would be a licensed educator. We're hoping either in the math and science field that would work with all of our program instructors to strengthen the rigor around those college credits and around those Tier 2 IRCs, and really developing a solid program of study that leads to pathways for students to see options for them within a career or within college, and really setting the students up for both pathways, because we know that a lot of students decide they don't want to college and then 3 years later decide they do, and we want to make sure that they have the foundation to be able to go into higher ed. So that's what all of the work is leading us to. And we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Sarah?
Kevin and I went and visited Stafford last week, and I had never walked through the entire building, and I was just overwhelmed with the amount of opportunities that the students have, the things they can get their hands on that I don't even think about getting my hands, like the things these kids can make and do make, are making and are creating is just phenomenal to me. And I'm kind of a spender. You can ask my husband. And I see something like this and I think, just throw money at that, throw money. But watching the instructors are so passionate, like they could talk forever about what they're teaching, and it was so fun to listen to them because they were having fun. But they're using everything. Like in the auto shop, they're building the trailer, and they were talking in the wood shop about something, and they're like, yeah, we're going to get the guys to weld it over here, and we'll bring it over here and use it for this. And the math teacher's out with the guys chopping up trees, teaching them how to measure. They use everything, and they're given so much, and then they use it to the nth degree, and it was like the best part of my day. I was just so impressed with how it's being used, how the kids are learning, and what the kids are learning. And I have a kid in Stafford, and they love it. So I was just really glad to go, and I'm really happy that you're doing so well, and I just support everything Stafford. So.
Mary Beth? I was going to ask how many students are at Stafford.
So right now we have about 238. Our max capacity, we have OSHA requirements that limit some of our class sizes. So max capacity with our current space is about 278. For next year, we are at about, the last time I checked, about 90% capacity. We have, all but 2 of our programs have wait lists. We have 112 students on the wait list right now.
That's crazy. Nice. Great. Kevin?
I was really impressed at all the real-life stuff that Stafford students were doing. That trailer was going to be used by the maintenance folks to transfer mowing equipment from one school to another, and they built it based on a trailer that was rotting in the woods. It was like, they're creating real-life stuff all over the place, and the engineering department is just way over my head. It's hard to imagine the things they're doing in high school. It's amazing.
Stephanie?
How many sending schools do we have?
On average, we're about 11. We have eight guaranteed, but we can expand that to 11. High school, so for instance, this year we have some students from Middlebury for programs that Hannaford Career Center does not offer, or if their programs are full, they have the opportunity to do this.
Oh, wow.
And is that the same, so like with sending students going into the high school, is the rate for the student coming the same, or is it a different rate coming to Stafford?
Rate being dollar-wise?
Tuition?
Tuition, thank you.
Tuition is the
They
same.
set their own, yeah.
We set tuition. It's based on a 6-semester average, and it's broken down by each town within that sending district. So if you're looking at Fairhaven, Benson gets a bill based on their 6-semester average, Bournemouth will get their own bill. It is based on the students and the town residents.
All right. Go ahead. Is there anything about all the data that you did that surprised you?
I think that the best surprise was, I will tell you, I was really nervous to get this data back from the state, knowing that we've been in a pandemic and students have been remote for a semester, and we'd only seen our students for 50%. And for career and tech ed, which is very hands-on, as you can imagine, only having the fact that we met, that was, all of those data points was very surprising in a good way. I don't think as far as some of the programs, I don't think it was a surprise as to which ones were lower. I think it was a wonderful surprise to see the impact of math instruction that's happening in the programs and on their scores when they compare to the previous year. So there was good surprises and some that were not as shocking, I guess. But I think it's definitely invigorating the staff. We have a very competitive staff, and we were one of 3 tech centers in the state that did not have to do an improvement plan. So they were really excited.
That's why you're a detective.
I have to say, they built a house up the street for me, which was amazing. Both my kids went to the preschool there, and I've worked with some of your LNAs, and every single avenue has been, I've been so impressed with the kids that come out of that program. You sure do.
One last question. What bribery tools did you use to get your survey responses on some of these 100% and 96 on those are dream response rates?
I shamelessly went around the cafeteria during every lunch.
Got it. Yeah.
That's
awesome. Perfect.
It worked. Whatever it takes, right?
Yep.
And the faculty, we gave them time during one of our PLC times to get it done.
Got it,
So
okay.
that it wasn't one extra thing.
Got it.
So I have one question. I'm sorry, I had to run out a situation. Anyways, so I am just curious, have you had an opportunity or thought about having the 8th graders, the middle schoolers, come and kind of shadow you guys so they can maybe get excited about their future plans, if maybe not planning on college, or?
So we do, we just hosted some Rutland Middle School students up at our school. So Cindy Dunnigan, who's our outreach coordinator, we have 34 middle schools that we are considered partner middle schools all across Rutland County. And so obviously COVID put a damper on some of that, but we are starting to get that middle school outreach. We have our long-awaited middle school trailer that hopefully it took 72 weeks from the day we ordered for it to come in, which our students have designed stations that represent their programs for hands-on activity, and the goal is to be able to bring, because transportation gets cut in a lot of budgets for field trips, so the goal is to be able to bring that trailer to all of the middle schools and to be able to have an interactive experience as kind of like a precursor, and then as part of their personalized learning plan, it incorporates Stafford as a career exploration opportunity for the students. But we've hosted several middle schools already this school year, and they come and they just explore around the tech center.
Cool.
Very good.
So if you do that, and you're gonna get that waiting list to more than 100 and whatever, do you have any thoughts long-term? I know that's probably pushing it right now.
It's something that our regional advisory board talks about quite regularly.
Like outgrowing your space, essentially.
We're maxed out in our current setting. We are absolutely maxed out. We have had conversations about satellite campuses. Those create their own unique challenges around, food service, nursing, if there's behavioral topics. So it's something that we're considering, but I don't think we're ready to check the box and make it happen right now. And, I'm a believer that we need to show sustained growth. I don't want to act on a whim, and it's just kind of a momentary blip in the data. So we want to see if it's sustained.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Next up, we'll turn it over to Superintendent Olson for the superintendent's report.
I'll try to condense a little bit. Be okay if I condense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I want to let the board know we're coming towards the end of our hiring season. This is the time where teachers are moving around, thinking about different positions. And I want to thank a lot of the people in the audience, folks that were involved in all hiring that went on. You can imagine hiring staff takes a lot of time and effort, going through interviews, doing the research on people coming into the district. So it takes a lot of work, and I think RIS is probably, they had the most work to do. They had a lot of retirements this year, so thank you all to those groups who did that. All the professional staff who come through into the district come through our offices, and I am really impressed with the people that we've been able to attract to the district. It's a really good sign for the district that we're an attractive place to be. So we still have some more spots to fill. Just letting you know quickly, we have a couple secretary positions, a couple positions in art and music, a couple of elementary school teachers that I think that might go down in number actually, a counselor position, and a speech language pathologist. And of course, I think Kate and Melissa mentioned that the electrical position at Stafford would be great to fill if we could fill that. We also have, and there might be actually a couple more openings because, people are still moving around possibly. We also have a lot of paraeducator openings for next year. So if anybody in the public is interested in working as a paraeducator in the district, it's a great job, really rewarding. So we have those openings if you're interested in applying. And we have positions open in our summer program for Epic and Tapestry, sorry. So again, those are rewarding positions, a lot of fun to work here in the summer. So thanks again to everybody who was involved in the hiring process, and great to see so many talented people come to Rutland City. I want to alert the board that we have graduation coming, if Isabella was here, almost a month away. We're just about to that date, a month away. So our senior awards night is Wednesday, June 15th at 6 p.m. Wednesday, June 15th at 6 p.m. And graduation is Thursday, June 16th at 6 p.m. And we're going to be this year back at Spartan Arena. So we're glad to be back there. It should be a nice place to be. We know that COVID numbers are increasing a little bit across the state, so we're trying to keep track of that and make sure that if we get to the point a month from now where things are drastically changed, we take precautions or do what we have to do to make sure it's a safe place. I would like to thank publicly Pam Reed and all her friends who were involved in helping develop some teacher appreciation events that have happened over the last couple months. Pam and some of her friends who are back there. We had a couple big, nice events that really involved a lot of school spirit and a lot of people participated. I think Stafford had 100% participation in the last one. Yeah, they get 100% on everything. So it was great to see people have had a long year working, and so it's nice that we were able to do that for folks. So thanks to Pam and the team. I also wanted to thank, we mentioned this already, that a lot of you on this board have visited our schools recently, and we thank you for doing that. And so if you're interested in doing that, especially to see a particular school or a particular program or multiple programs, I know Karen took a grand tour. It's a 3-hour tour.
She made it out.
So if you're interested in doing that, please do it. It's great for you to be able to see all these things that Kate and Melissa were talking about, for instance, or what Glenn was talking about. If you see it up close and see it for real, it makes much more sense to you. So it's helpful. And the kids and the staff love to see you there. I wanted to also thank, we had, last night, we were at this meeting last night. I wanted to thank the staff and the students that are involved in a recent innovation that came out of the Equity Committee, the district's Equity Committee. They've had some meetings, I think 5 times so far this year, and this concept is called Listening Circle. And the purpose of these listening circles is to promote community discussions where participants learn and engage in facilitated, protocol-framed civil dialogue about predetermined topics. So it's a structured conversation where there's a little bit of talking and a lot of listening. Students and adults are supposed to be learning how to practice respectful exchanges. It's not a debate, it's a constructed listening process. And last night, we heard from one of our 12th grade students, Sophie Anderson, she did a capstone project on Asian American stigmatization, and she brought that into the listening circle as a topic. And there were a number of protocols that we went through where we talked about the topic that she presented at the beginning of the hour. So there's one more to go if you're interested in doing that. We'd love anybody to attend, and that's coming up, I think, at the beginning of June, maybe? Beginning of June. Okay. Great. So, and then the last thing I want to make sure we highlight, but I think Ted's going to talk about, is the people weighting efforts, and maybe Allison and Ted will talk about it. That's it for my report.
June 6th.
June 6th, okay. I think it's in the library again, the high school library. June 6th, probably 6:30.
All right, thank you. So next on the agenda is the committee reports. So the first one up is the building committee. Turn that over to Kevin.
There's not much I can add to what Glenn already described. Glenn's really awesome on presentations especially, but he also does a whole lot of things, as you can see. I'm really superfluous as a committee chair. I just turn it over to Glenn.
All right. Okay, so next up is the policy committee. So Karen, did you find what you wanted pulled out?
I did not, and the reason I didn't find it in this packet is that it was left as it was. So I'll just bring it back up.
Okay.
Policy.
Perfect, so we're good to go ahead.
Yes.
What's there? So we'll have you do the report, Kathy, and then we'll need a motion to accept them for the first reading.
Okay, the two, I think, really big ones are the 1345 board conduct, and we added the Vermont School Boards Association Code of Ethics verbatim to the board conduct policy. And everyone, I believe, received that at our first organizational meeting. And then the second one was 1560, the annual organizational meeting, and the committee discussed and ultimately decided that the best way to proceed is to add a meeting and not go to twice a month, and continue to do a lot of work in committees at the committee level, and then bring it back to the full board once a month. So we're going to add a special reorganization meeting on the third Thursday that works with our town charter, that we can have that additional meeting. So that additional meeting, simply for reorganization, will happen on the third Thursday in March.
Thursday or Tuesday?
Yeah, I thought we decided Tuesday.
Oh, it says Thursday in my...
I don't know, it has to be a certain number of days, so...
It was after the next Tuesday after the 15th.
Which would be the third.
Tuesday, okay, sorry. Tuesday.
Okay.
And we also would like to recommend to the board that we have everyone at that first reorganizational meeting sign the VSBA Code of Ethics as part of that meeting. Everything else we went over was basically an update of language. Does anybody have any questions?
If we entertain a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to pass policies 1345, 1560, 4240, 4250, 4251, 4310, 4410, and 4510.
Second.
Just to clarify, for the first reading.
For the first reading.
Still second. All right. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then that brings us to the next committee, the Finance and Planning Committee. So I will turn that over to Mary Beth.
Thanks, Allison. Certainly like to invite Ted to the table if he'd like to join us. I'll just give a quick summary. We covered adding 2 new buses and had a special meeting in order to do that. And then we covered a lot of really great groundwork on strategic planning, which I think those of us who are strategic strategic planning nerds are really excited about. I do think it will help us lay the groundwork for some of the difficult conversations that we've had in the past, and we look to make easier. So if that's okay, Ted, you sent me a really nice summary, but I'd like you to get the credit for it, so, okay.
As long as we have a good discussion, it doesn't matter where the credit goes, but as Mary Beth was saying in our last meeting, we really basically had a scoping discussion to explore aspects of what a strategic plan could and should be. So for example, we talked about what would the purpose be, what kinds of outcomes would we anticipate, what sort of deliverables would we want to provide, and what the timing might be. So it was basically a process-focused discussion. In that discussion, we started off by focusing on some of the results of the district's Performance Excellence Initiative, which we refer to as PEI, which was started when Mary Moran was superintendent many years ago. This is a very content-rich set of materials with a lot of findings and recommendations. So we thought about using that as a guide to build on, but not to be constrained by. We pointed out that PEI work really basically was the foundation for the district's current mission, vision, and core values. So, as a matter of fact, for those of you who read all the way through the agenda for the board meetings, you can flip to the second page and you will see at the back the vision, the mission, and some of the core values, including the board's objectives. So PEI started that, is a great foundation, but we're talking about building upon that and potentially updating it as needs be. And using a very similar process, at least to start with, as was used for PEI, a fact-finding phase, looking at the current state of the district, and then scoping what some of the directions might be. We also discussed the possible benefits of engaging an experienced consultant, specifically one from a nonprofit national firm that works with many education systems, that is got a lot of not only experience in these processes for schools, but also has some very interesting and creative tools, one of which is called Portrait of a Graduate. And what's interesting about this is, again, they focus not on where we are, but where we need to be. They talk about, they have a method to engage constituent input from all members of the community to talk about, what are your aspirations for students? What types of skills will they need in 5 years and 10 years? Is the school curriculum doing the kind of job you want to prepare students to be successful in an environment in 2025 or 2030, given all of the disruptors that are changing our world so quickly? Then we talked about, Bill and Rob both had input from some of their fellow superintendents and assistant superintendents who are doing this, using this process, and have very favorable reactions so far. Quite a number of districts in Vermont, supervisory unions, have used this with very favorable results. So we reviewed some of those, and then of course the next question always is, do we have the money budgeted for that? It's not an expensive proposition as consultants would go, because again, they're nonprofit. And we do have the funds available both for this year and next, by virtue of the fact that we have decided to go ahead with leasing to own some of the buses that we'll procure. So instead of, using $190,000 that's budgeted this year, and again is in the 23 budget, we're going to spread that and pay for that as you go over a period of 5 years, which will free up some cash from the budgeted cash flows that we had. So we can use it for that. We can use it, we're going to use it, for example, for the roof repair at Northeast this year. And so the board may decide to use that free cash in other ways, pending Finance Committee recommendations. But my comment is simply to say that there are always ins and outs, and that funding would not be a problem. So we're excited. We hope to come back at the June meeting with a few more specifics about that proposal. But just wanted to give you a heads up that we're very encouraged that this could be the kind of thought exercise that can be of great value. I always say, because I am also a strategic planning nerd, a strategic plan is not a forecast. It's not a prediction. It involves looking to the future, but what it really should be is a decision-making tool and a priority-setting tool so that you can have some achievable goals and go from there. And I did hand out copies to a few of the committee members of what I think is an excellent book by an entrepreneur named John Doerr, and it's entitled Measure What Matters. I've been asked by some other, there you go, I've been asked by some other board members who attend the meeting, and everybody is welcome, you don't have to be on the finance committee, to provide some copies, and if anybody's interested, just send me a line or an email, and we'll be glad to get that. It's well worth the read because it has some excellent and very readable examples. So that's the update on the strategic plan and the busing situation. As Mary Beth said, we did have a special meeting this week, as you know, to approve the acquisition of 2 more buses so that we can place orders now, because the manufacturers are telling us that the lead times could stretch into March of 23 if you place the order now. So we're trying to get ahead of that curve. I noted for the committee that if you look at the competitive bids for school buses that we received in November, December versus the ones we got in April, the lowest bid increased by 7% just in 4 to 5 months. So we know we need the buses, so we're locking those prices in and moving forward. Yes.
So I know with the special meeting, we're set, and we did lock those, the 3rd and 4th bus in?
Yeah, and the good news is the rates were locked before the Federal Reserve announced a 1.5% increase last Wednesday. So, yeah, we're making sure that, we're shepherding that very closely to make sure we complete the deal while we still have the rate lock.
Mary Beth?
Thanks so much, Ted, for all of your intuitive thinking on all of that and everything that you provided to me via email in terms of ins and outs and how things kind of come and go. That was really, really helpful. And it's finals week at Castleton, so on Saturday, on Monday, my summer starts, and I can't wait to read the book.
You'll find it goes very quickly. It's very readable, and it's very familiar names like Google and Intuit and Adobe, and you have great lessons there. So.
All right. Stay right there, because you're up next again. All right, so next on the agenda, unfinished business, we have student waiting. Ted's going to give us an update on the status of that bill.
No, I'm kidding. So the great news is, as many of you probably have read, within the last few weeks, the Vermont Senate and the House passed by overwhelming margins a bill, it's called S-287, that would implement many of the recommendations of the original 2019 UVM Rutgers rating study. It wouldn't be implemented in the exact form that the UVM study recommended. There have been policy changes to many facets of those recommendations, one of which, unfortunately, would probably tend to reduce the benefit intended for districts that are less affluent and have greater numbers of students coming from low-income families. But nevertheless, it would still be a very important step forward. So you take the process of compromise, and you're thankful for what you can do to move ahead. This bill is very interesting because it has language including it would adjust the school funding formula. Now, that's really interesting because we're talking about implementing the weights, that's good, in a modified form, okay. But when you have very broad language like adjust the school funding formula, skeptics like myself look at that and they think, I wonder what else could be on the agenda for next year. So we're going to keep very close watch over where that goes. JFO, the Joint Fiscal Office, has been charged by this bill to generate, I think, 4 or 5 various reports with different recommendations about things that could be done and will likely be considered by the legislature next year, such as recommending measures for cost containment. There are provisions that are trying to make sure that costs are kept reasonable for the taxpayer. That's a worthy objective, but as anything else, it's always how you do it that can have some impact, so we'll be following that. The bill is also intended to, quote, provide oversight of educational quality and funding. So it's a worthy endeavor to say we want to make sure that any actions and fiscal funds yield the results that we want. We all want results for what we pay. But when we talk about oversight of educational quality, I'm wondering what more somebody might have in mind that the local school boards and administrations aren't already doing. So again, there are some things that we'll have to watch. But to end on the positive note that I think we can all be very fortunate, I personally don't describe this as a win. Some people described it as a win. Well, win suggests you're done. We're not done. But it is an important step forward, and I do believe that what we have, as long as it follows through in the directions that we hope, can help to create a more equitable allocation of financial resources and thereby promote a more equitable access to essential educational services for students across the state. And that ultimately was the main focus and objective. So kudos to a number of the board members around this table who have dedicated a lot of time, a lot of team efforts. Typically, it's 20% of the people who are doing 80% of the work. That's just the way the dynamics tend to work. But it got done, and we'll see what happens in the next 6 months. One last thing. One of the disappointments was that some of us were hoping that this would be implemented sooner rather than later. The current legislation would not implement the new weights until fiscal '25. And there are a number of reasons for that. I'm hoping one of those reasons is not any attempts to kill the weights before they ever get implemented. So again, we'll be watching very closely. I'm glad to answer any questions.
So also, just to add to that, one of the things I was going to highlight was the lead-in time. So unfortunately, we're not going to see relief from this in the next couple of years. Another concern, and why we don't exactly know our predicted outcomes here, is going to be the poverty metric and how that they're changing the way that is measured, and then you spread that across the state and then reduce the pieces of the pie. So it's hard to predict. And I think, as Ted mentioned, what they're looking to evaluate, we are thinking that's going to roll into the EQS, or the Education Quality Standards, that are being rolled out as well. So other things to look at coming forth.
We're much further ahead now than we expected to be a year ago, so that's a positive.
Questions, comments?
I'd like to say thanks to Ted, and thanks to the board for supporting this and you spent a ton of hours on this through the years. So thank you for all that work for the benefit of it.
It make a huge difference for our community. So anyway, thank you so much for your time.
All right, so any new business to come before the board? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.